Hi, children. It's Grandma Carla with Chapter 6 of The Littles. When are the Specks going to get here? Lucy Little asked. It was the same question she had been asking all day. Right now, Lucy was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the living room floor. She was spinning a single jack around and around like a top. Soon, her mother told her. You have to be patient a little bit longer. Granny Little and Lucy's mother were sitting together on the sofa. Granny was knitting a tiny wool hat for baby Betsy. Mrs. Little and Grandpa Little were playing a card game that Grandpa had invented. The game was called Whompsters. Grandpa had hand-drawn each tiny playing card himself. He had also built the card table. He had carefully glued together a few playing cards from a normal-sized antique deck of cards for the tabletop. The surface of the table was a beautiful, laughing joker card. The table had folding bobby pin legs so that it could easily be stored away when it wasn't being used. Grandpa Little was very proud of his craftsmanship. I thought the Specks were coming today. Lucy was very eager to see Janie and Annie Speck. She hadn't seen them since her family had traveled to pay the Speck family a visit at their tree home in the heart of the great woods. It seemed like a long time ago to Lucy. The Specks lived much differently than the Littles did. They didn't have any big people around and had to do everything themselves. Still, their home was very beautiful, and their lives were as rich and as interesting as any of those in the tiny house. The Littles had met the Specks on one of their many adventures. They had been welcomed into the Tree Tiny's home like the members of the Specks' own family. They're not going to arrive during the day, Lucy, said her father, looking up from his game. Remember Stubby Speck's friend, Old Skunk? Lucy nodded. How could she forget the wild animal that the Specks had managed to tame and train as a family pet? Well, her father continued, Mr. and Mrs. Speck and their daughters are traveling courtesy of Old Skunk's back. He's big enough that they can easily bring whatever else they need along with them. Old Skunk is a nocturnal creature, and that means that he's really only comfortable going out at night. Besides, it's best that they travel under cover of darkness, don't you think? Lucy nodded her head again. Will Old Skunk be staying here too? She asked. All I know, Mrs. Little chimed in with a smile, is that I'm not setting an extra place at our Thanksgiving table for that stinky beast. No, Mr. Little said, Old Skunk won't be joining us for dinner. In fact, Cousin Dinky told me that the Specks are planning to send him back to the Great Woods after they get here. Won't he get lost? Asked Lucy. She looked puzzled. Not Old Skunk, Mrs. Little said. He knows the woods like the back of his paw. It's just about time for him to go into hibernation anyway. He has to get back to his den so that he can start his long winter's nap. How are the Specks going to get back home after Thanksgiving if Old Skunk doesn't wake up? Lucy wanted to know. He doesn't need to wake up, Lucy. We're going to give the Speck family a ride home after their visit. I'm sure that Hildy won't mind taking everyone back into the woods, especially with your brother Tom doing the driving. That cat just loves the boy. Hump, Granny Little snorted, looking up from what she was doing. Tiny's riding around on skunks and cats. It just isn't natural. Whompers, yelled Grandpa. He startled everyone in the room as he threw down his cards on Joker's face on the center of the table. I won! Darn it, Dad, you always win, said Mr. Little. In fact, I'm not even sure how you won. You make up your new rules every time we play. Well, that's the way the cookie crumbles, said Grandpa Little, winking at his wife. Maybe next time we can play a game that you invented, and you can see what it feels like to win for a change. Tisk. Oh, Amos, really, isn't it time that you grew up? Granny Little couldn't help chuckling as she scolded her husband. She smiled to herself as she shook her head and went back to her knitting. That's the end of Chapter 6 of the Tinies of the Littles. Now let me show you the pictures in this chapter. There's Grandpa Little and Mr. Little playing cards on the table that Grandpa Little fixed, and Grandpa won. This is Grandma Carla with Chapter 6.